A woman's looks does not matter. It is how much she is doing for you that matters.
Expectations lead to disappointment. Expectations lead to arguments in a lot of ways.
You shouldn't expect somebody to act a certain way, and when they do or don't, you should have a backup plan for that.
As I'm trying to figure out what's happening, why 40% or 50% of black women over 40 are not married or have these in-depth relationships.
In 500 feet, make a U-turn at Pillsbury Drive, then stay straight to take the Interstate 70 East ramp.
Can you hear me, Doug?
I sure can, Brian. How are you?
I am doing okay. I am the place I plan on stopping. I'm driving to Pittsburgh from Colorado, and the place I went to stop at didn't have internet like I thought it would. So I was driving down a little bit, but I figured, hey, it's a Fireside Chat. Do I look like I'm in a fire? Oh my gosh. And
then, do we need to reschedule this
intro.
or what you got?
Well, it's up to you. I mean, I have no problem going ahead and trying to see what we can do and talk. And you can see me okay, can't you? I mean, are you okay seeing me? Am I dark enough, bright enough? I got that yellow tint to me. And yeah, the only thing that is, obviously a concern, not a concern because I can cut it out, is the intro that just played was for a different podcast, but I couldn't stop it when I put it on. So, oh my gosh. Are you hearing me okay? Am I chopping up a lot?
No. It sounds all right. Can you hear me okay?
Let's see if I can. Yeah, I can hear you good. Yeah, I can hear you pretty good. So I just got to, I'm going to see if I can get to maybe even a better spot here. Let me do this real quick. All right. And I don't know if that's any better or not. How has your day been? What have you been doing this day?
Well, it's been good. Usual day. Multiple coaching calls with clients and all the good stuff. So yeah, it's been a good day.
U-turn to stay on Pillsbury. Right to take the Interstate 70 East ramp.
Oh, there we go. Turn that down. Sorry about that. Oh my gosh, I don't know. I'm gonna see if I can get to one more little bit better spot, and if I can't, then we are going to reschedule for another time. Just because I can't figure out how to get it to, really good internet. And I'm in somewhere like Topeka, Kansas, is where I think I'm at right now.
Oh,
which
gotcha.
Is kind of a weird spot to be. I don't know. There should be good internet in Topeka, right? I actually stopped, pulled over, and then there was nothing. It was zero internet access. So now I think I'm in pretty good shape. Let's see.
Well, I'm happy to hold another time. I didn't know if this was going to be a live stream or just a pre-recorded deal or how you did it.
Gotcha. Well, right now we are live, and so everybody is hearing. We are on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, I believe.
All right.
And so, but really wanted to, just kind of, it's so good to talk to you and all the things that you've done, and wanted to kind of talk about, the different aspects of, your life and what you're doing, and kind of just really dive deep in. I know last time we were able to talk about your story a little bit, but really not a lot about what you do and the things that you do to make a difference in people's lives. And just the impact that on a daily basis that you are creating. And so maybe you can share a little bit just about what that is. I mean, what are you doing on a daily basis every single day in order to serve others? As I think about service and what service means, sometimes we get stuck in this, I gotta, figure out how I'm going to make myself things. But that doesn't seem like that's you very often. It seems like you're spending more time serving others in great ways. And so maybe you can start with that. And as I get what's your thought process?
That part chopped up right there. I'm not sure I heard the tail end of what you were asking.
I'm just asking you to talk about how you serve others.
Yeah. Well, happy to describe that. I mean, primarily the bulk of my time, I do work as an executive coach, and I help business people really in all walks. I have clients that are, in all realms. I've got entrepreneurs with small businesses. I've got executives with Fortune 500. Generally, what we do is we talk about where they are in their leadership journey, and I try to help them plot a course for improving their impact and effectiveness as a leader. And we leverage my, many years in the trenches, being a guy that's been out there doing it. And we just try to define a pathway for them to take everything to the next level.
So one of the things so when somebody comes to you and they say, I'm not hitting my goals, or should I be making these goals, or what are these goals that I should be doing? What are some of the things, or where do you kind of start with somebody and able to help them get there?
Yeah, well, goal setting in and of itself, there's, been a lot written, and a lot of people have different approaches on how to do that. A lot of times with most of my clients, we start with a more basic question. And the question is, what do you really want to be about? What kind of leader do you think you want to be in the situation you're in, whether it's leading at home or leading in the community or leading at business at work? Have you ever thought about who and what you really want to be? And a big percentage of people typically have never asked themselves that question. They've just kind of been riding the wave. I got out of school, I got a job, I got this first opportunity, I got promoted, I got moved up, I got transferred, I got moved. And I call it riding the wave. You're experiencing a little bit of success, and then so that's growing your opportunity and your status. But if you're in a management and leadership role, if you've never really thought about the leader you think you want to be, you got to start there.
Yeah. And do most people kind of start out with like their home life, or do they always pretty much go to what their business is because that's what's bringing in the money, or that's what's most important? And then you find out, well, we got to work on some home life stuff first.
Yeah. Most of my clients come to me from the business angle. Either their company has put them up for some coaching support, or they themselves have reached out to try to find it. But as we get into some of these principles,
Oh my God, sorry about that. I hit a button that I wasn't trying to hit. So maybe one more. So they start out at business, and then they move into personal, or sometimes they don't.
Yeah, as we start, from the business angle first, when we start talking about these questions, like what kind of leader do you really want to be? A lot of times it turns into what kind of person do you really want to be? How do you want to show up for the people that mean the most to you, and whether that's family or friends or community over and above the work. Sometimes they all go hand in hand, and the things we start talking about to do a better job of defining the leader they want to be, they realize, well, this applies everywhere. This is not just at work, 8 to 5. This is something I need to think about in my personal life with my spouse or whatever.
Yeah, when I think of like what leadership means, it's like I think Maxwell says, if you are a leader and you have no followers, you're only taking a walk, and so like you said, some people are promoted to these leadership positions. Do you find that like a lot of folks don't even really understand like the difference between a leader and maybe a manager?
Yeah.
Or because they've been managing all their lives, now you have to kind of walk into a different realm?
Yeah. What I've seen in most cases, and I think part of it has to do with information that's available on the internet and workshops and discussions that people are having. I used to ask the question, I used to ask clients, do you think there's a difference between management and leadership? And there was a time when people kind of struggled with that, and they weren't sure, that maybe yes, maybe no, never really thought about it, et cetera, et cetera. But now if I ask that question, people go, absolutely, there's a difference. So I really don't even ask that question anymore. My question is, what is the difference between management and leadership? And, I get a lot of different answers, but, the basic one that I go with is that management is about things and leadership is about people.
Oh, gotcha. Oh my gosh. And so I love that you said that so much right now, because I think we're in this time, where relationship is everything. And I think we're struggling to find people who understand that. I just wrote a book called Relationship versus AI, because now we've even added this component of artificial intelligence, where relationship becomes even more important. But I just don't know. I was on a podcast yesterday. We were talking about relationship, and one of the things that we talked a lot about is, do people understand how important their relationships are compared to just going through the motions at work, or getting stuff done? We've gone to this where we used to have to know things. Now we just have to learn things. But have we learned how to interact with other people? It's not just going to, taking your crew out to, beers once a month on Thursday night or something like that, to do bowling night or something. There's got to be a lot more relationships. So how are you approaching the whole concept of relationship now inside of leadership and beyond?
Well, we quoted Maxwell a moment ago, and I'll share another message I heard from him recently, and I totally agree with. The way Maxwell puts it, it's one thing for a leader to be a good communicator, but the real question is, are you a good connector? And you can stand up and talk to your team all day long, but are you connecting? Are any of your ideas or your directions, are they landing, and are they being taken in at a deeper level with your team? And do your ideas resonate with that team so that they want to do good work? They want to take a little ownership of what they're doing, so that then you can accomplish responsibility and accountability. But you can't have responsibility and accountability without ownership. So it's a it's a moving train that is the leader's challenge in today's world.
When you mention connecting, maybe kind of dive a little bit deeper in what does it mean to connect with another individual, as a leader, or just connecting as a colleague or connecting as a subordinate. I mean, is it a lost art that we just don't teach anymore, or is it just it should be natural?
Well, it is. I do think it's becoming a lost art. Some people are more naturally good at it than others, but I think where it applies is that when you think about it, the only reason we get into deep, meaningful relationships in our lives is that we have to first connect. We have to kind of bridge. It's been described as, well, in a business sense, there's a popular phrase that says we do business with people that we know, like, and trust. You can know somebody, that's a basic connection. You start to like them when you have multiple touch point connections and you start evaluating and saying, yeah, I think this person, is a pretty good one to know. And then eventually you build a level of trust, and that's where you start activating things like, I'll give you a purchase order, or I'll do big business with you. And the same is true in our relationships. You generally don't hook up and marry people that you haven't already gotten to know and like them and trust them. I know there's some reality TV shows about married at first sight, but that's a clown show if you've ever watched it.
What a mess. Or wife swap or something like that, where I'm gonna trade my wife for you to another person for a month. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That's just like you said, the reality TV. But it just seems like there's just this lost, when you and I were growing up, and I think we're pretty close to the same age, but we didn't have the internet. We didn't have multiple channels on television. There's like 3 channels and it wasn't worth watching. So we stayed outside all day, and all the kids in the neighborhood, especially in the summertime, we stayed out till the street light came on and tried to stay out even longer. And we just learned how to connect. And then in today's world, like, our connection is like comparing ourselves on the internet when we start scrolling and stuff. And then we really don't. Now we get jumped into this, hey, you've done really good at your position at work, so we're going to make you a leader. But you don't have any friends. You don't even know how to make friends. You just, for a lot of folks, unless you're C-suite people, you've just gone through by texting and emailing and IMing and never connecting in that deep way. What do we do? How do we restart? Or are they just going to figure it out? The folks that are not connecting and struggling big time.
Well, on one hand, I do think that's where coaching and mentoring comes in. The people that are our emerging leaders of today, they need a chance to hear about that and know about that if they don't already have some skill that they've figured out. And that's very much part of the work that I do, is to help identify where those gaps are. Somebody might be a brilliant technologist or engineer or scientist, but if they don't have some of those people skills, that ability to connect or read the room, as we say, get a pulse on people, and you can't say the same thing to everybody and get the same result. You have to evaluate people. You have to pay attention to how they're reacting and responding to what's going on. And you have to be able, as a leader, to adjust your approach or your content to provide better clarity or provide better understanding, and build that relationship over time through the way you connect.
I was reading an article that was in, I think, Forbes magazine this last week. It was talking about parents that are,
Looks like we froze. Total blockage here. The joys of live TV. Brian, if you can hear me, we might have to restart something. Yep. Here we go. Looks like Brian has hit a dead zone in his travels, so we're going to see if he can get to a hot spot. Come back online here with us. Well, we apologize for the dead air. It looks like we've got a little bit of technology interruption here. Brian is on the road trying to make a connection and seems to, he may be coming back.
there we go. We're back. Sorry about that. I guess we're through some kind of area here. So what I was asking is, that, like it said, 1 out of 4 parents are going to job interviews with their Gen Z kids because those kids don't know how to communicate, and they're staying at home and they're not getting jobs. So parents have decided to pick up and go to these job interviews in hopes that they can smooth this over. I mean, is it too late at this time? I mean, I'm thinking as a leader, am I hiring a kid that their parents come to do the job interview?
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking about that a while back with a guest on my podcast, and we were going through that dynamic. And if we thought helicopter parents were bad, my God, think about that. A 20-something showing up for a job interview with his mom or dad sitting there. And I kind of off the cuff, I told my guests, I said, if I was the hiring manager in that situation, I would immediately disqualify him.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you're not. If you can't show up on your own by yourself, what are you going to do for me day by day?
Yeah. And are your parents coming to work with you, or I guess they're negotiating salaries. They're filling out the resumes. They're filling out the job applications. They're taking the test, the pre-test of, that's all online. And you go, wait a minute. How do we, if you bring somebody on as a leader, I guess, is your first week or two with the folks, instead of teaching them the job skills, teaching them how to communicate with the rest of the staff?
Yeah. Well, we could probably spend a whole broadcast talking about some concerns in the, education system and social standards. There's a definite shift. I don't deny that at all. I mean, everything from the lack of critical thinking all the way out to, those kind of behaviors needing to have a parent with you at the job interview. I had a slight experience with that a while back. I was running a job search ministry. We were trying to help people it was a nonprofit that I had created, and we were trying to help people that were between jobs. And I had somebody show up, and their mom came with them, and I knew the family, and I looked at the mom and I said, "Oh, good to see you. Would you like a cup of coffee?" And she said, "Oh, sure." And I said, "Are you planning on staying around?" She said, "Yeah, I'm gonna help." And I said, "No, not really. No, you're not." I said, your son is here to take our training and represent himself." And she said, "Well, I can't stay." And I said, "Yeah, you can stay, but you're going to have to sit over there." And I pointed at a chair in the back of the room, and I said, you can observe, but no, you can't, be in the middle of this. He needs to figure this out on his own.
Wow. And how did he do? I'm just curious. Was he able
Oh,
to?
he's great. He was a smart kid, and he's done very well, and he's grown and married and has a family. A great guy, doing just fine. And it was the mom that was the insecure one in the whole thing, and she had just had a need to insert herself, and we didn't do that. We didn't really facilitate that or enable that.
Yeah. So you brought up ministry, which is so important. And I think about the decline of us going to church, and the churches that were out there that were teaching a lot of these skills. As when I was growing up, I mean, we went to church every Sunday, and everybody went to church every Sunday, and that's where we met new people and we got new groups. And the algorithm didn't just put us with people that were just like us, so that we could, because sometimes you go to these online things and it's everybody that's exactly like you. What is there a place in ministry still, or within our church structure here in the U.S., that some of these skills can still be ascertained or gained or put together, and then having God as being part of the first thing that you're thinking about when you get up, and then with Him helping us with the relationships we have? It seems like that just a lot of the folks that I talk to now are just so lonely because there's this gap that is missing, and the church is not fulfilling it, but I'm not sure what is.
Yeah, that's a great observation, and I'm there with you. I have had a growing concern over the years myself. I mean, my kids are all grown now, and they're healthy adults, and they're doing their own thing, having their own families. But I do worry about the younger ones that are coming up. Like, for instance, I've got grandkids, and I am very worried about them, because the kind of environment you're talking about from when you were younger, and that those great developmental opportunities, I don't think they exist in the church structures anymore. I mean, I know some are better than others, but in general, what I see is a decline in the participation of students going to the youth programs, the student and youth programs that churches offer. And partly because those programs have become just some sort of upscale babysitting. I mean, they try to have, movies and food, and, there's no intentional exchange and practice of having a discussion about how to build a relationship or how to talk to people. And when the kids show up kind of pre-programmed to isolate on a screen, that's allowed to go on. I walked into youth group meetings where every kid in the room has their phone out.
Oh, gosh.
It's like, what are we doing here? Why are we doing this? You're supposed to be connecting to that person sitting next to you, and it is a big concern.
Yeah, well, I even when I think of like youth sports, even, so, the church is not fulfilling it. And now youth sports has come so specialized that we all, everybody has to go with that coach that is going to teach you to be the best soccer player, the best basketball player, the best person in the world. And it's totally 100% about the skill set and, maybe some mindset, but the relationship part of it, like when I showed up to U Sport, there were some of us that were good and some of us that were bad, and we got to know each other, and they became my friends, and I hung out with them at school. And now, like, as I coach track, I go, I talk to some of the athletes, and they don't even know each other at school because they're not on the same teams, because they're all on these club teams, and they only see each other at practice for an hour. They don't. It's like the whole society has gone to this individual. We don't do relationship, and I'm concerned. But I guess what I'm looking for is some ways to fix that. Is it online groups? What is it that we do that helps us here?
Yeah. Well, I think, at least for the moment, I think what we are seeing, or at least what I believe I've observed, is in a way people can and are outgrowing that, whatever their youth experience is. If they go into the work world, they are being baptized by fire, in terms of other generational experience, meeting older people, meeting people with longer term history in the work. And the good news is the data that I read says the young people are in fact hungry to learn when they show up for work. They just maybe don't know how to communicate it really well. And again, I go back a little bit to the leader having the burden in this of connecting correctly with the people they've got. And it is a matter of going one-on-one with a new team member and saying, just what do you see yourself doing? Where do you see yourself going? What do you want to get out of this experience? And use that as kind of a foundation to take into account with the work you've got, and then go to work with them on helping help them become the best version of themselves while they're working for you.
Oh man, that is so good, because if we can train leaders that way, and do you see like the pendulum swinging back to everybody needs to come to work, everybody needs to spend time at work, and not this, one day on and, one day we come to work and 4 days we're at our house doing everything online. Are you seeing it more and more where, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, you need to be at work because you have to have those skills? Or is it we have to?
We still have a challenge on that issue, I believe, and partly because one of the things I think COVID made us all do, those of us that were old enough to vividly remember the fear of the first 6 months of COVID, most of us really didn't know if we were going to be on a hospital bed somewhere or not make it out of that. And so we were all dealing with our own sense of mortality one way or another. And for everybody that did survive it, I think there's a mind shift in the relationship of how work is supposed to fit into the rest of your life. And I do think, and I think there's data to support this, that a lot more people now are quicker to quit jobs that aren't totally fulfilling their expectation of how to operate.
Yeah.
Now, what that does tend to mean, I think more people than not, if they can, whatever industry or specialty they're in, if they think they can work remote, they want to be able to have that option. But at the same time, data is also telling us that the younger people recognize they're missing out on not being in the office with the more senior people to get the training, get the experience, get the exposure to help them advance in their career. So it's a rub, it's an issue that people are concerned about. The biggest objection I hear today is the companies that have said, we want you in the office 2 out of 5 days, you pick which 2. And everybody goes, okay, that sounds good, right? But no, what happens is you pick your 2 days and you go into the office, and guess what? Everybody else is gone. So you're in the
Yes.
office, but nobody else is there to talk to. So you wasted your commute time and did all that to get there. And now you're sitting in a cubicle or an office or a conference room on Zoom having remote meetings. And it's like, why does that make sense? Why does that make sense?
Yeah. You brought up expectations, and I had my kids are grown as well. My youngest daughter just turned 29 in September, and I guess a couple weeks ago, she's a radiology tech, so she takes X-rays. And a couple of weeks ago, there was a radiology tech day. I guess we have a day for everything. We got a day for if your toes, you got 10 toes or 9 toes or whatever it is. But her expectation was that during that week, that the bosses would do something special for her every day. And they didn't. They did something one day and told her she could have one gift. And she was genuinely upset that they didn't recognize that this week was special to her, and I don't know if it was a gratitude thing or that I kind of took on and going, wait a minute, they got you something. You should be happy. You expect that you would get something. And are people even the leaders that you talk to, are they expecting to be treated differently? What are the expectations that I guess are false? And then what are some that we should actually have in the workplace?
I think that depends, and I think it is all over the board. I think I generally, that whole question, I slot that under the idea of company culture, and whatever the company has decided to do culturally to celebrate special holidays, have special events, give special recognition, try to honor people for different stages of their career. That's all very much a cultural thing. Some companies don't do it at all. They might let you take a day off for your birthday or something like that, but they're not big on doing that. They're all about the production. So I think generally I call that a cultural question. And I think it's fair during the job hunt to, if you're a candidate trying to get a job, ask those questions. What is the culture here? How do you recognize people? How do you review people? How do you evaluate how we're doing in our work? How often does it happen? How does it work when it does happen? Those are all very valid questions.
And I want to move this expectation thing away from the workplace. As I do, whether I'm, counseling or I'm at the hospital or I'm talking to young couples and we're talking about even like marriage expectations or relationship expectations. I see so many couples now, I guess, like with all the gaming and the internet and, I see couples go to dinner and I see, both of them on their phone for the whole 45 minutes that they're at dinner at a restaurant, as if the world outside of them is so much more important than the world that's within. What are some of those expectations that we should have in relationships, and what should we be as the leader or wanting to be leader of the, for a moment in our relationship? What should we be projecting or being an example of, or just, saying, wait a minute, this isn't okay? What are some of those things that we should make priorities, I guess?
Man. We may have to do a whole other show on this one, my friend.
I love it.
I'll tell you quickly, the first thing that comes to mind when you start thinking about expectation in a couple's relationship, I think the big challenge is determining whether or not the person you think you want to commit to is already themselves whole, or are they do they have whole WHOLE, or do they have a whole HOLE in their soul that they're looking to be filled? And that, if that's true, that drives expectations that can be unrealistic and unattainable.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And I have gone on record, I've said this a number of times, but I haven't said it in a while. One of the worst lines in a Hollywood movie that screwed up relationships forevermore after that was in Jerry Maguire when, yeah, she says, "You complete me."
Yes, yes, yes.
I went, oh my God, we're all going to crash and burn over that expectation.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, and I see so much loneliness, and even when they're together, like you said, did you expect them to fill that, HOLE hole that was in your heart? And then how do you give? If what we need to do is serve, and serve in our personal relationships as well as our work relationships, how do we do that when we ourselves are just struggling with the emptiness?
Yeah. Well, and that's where, the deep work has to happen. Somebody that is growing up, a younger person trying to think about adult life. And even if you subscribe to the idea that I'm supposed to find a life partner and, build my own story, if that emptiness and brokenness exists, there's a whole body of work that needs to be done before you need to worry about making a commitment on getting married and by God, having children.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, because now when you add the children to it, now, so if you have that hole that's still within you, you're somehow expecting your children to fill that hole, and they're definitely going to come short. And then you make them do all these things, whether it's the sports or the music or whatever it is that you have them doing, and you're kind of living your existence through them in so many ways. Oh my gosh.
Oh, you talked about youth sports. I see that all the time at the ballpark. I see these moms and dads that they have so much aspiration for their child, and it's all driven by what they never got to do as a young person. And it puts a huge burden on the kid, and the kid might be no more suited to playing baseball or soccer than the man in the moon, and yet they're out there being forced to do the drills and playing the games, and they're not having fun.
No, they're hating it. They're hating it, and mom is making them do it, and even going to all these practices, and you're 9 years old going to swim practice, 5 days a week and sometimes twice a week, just so
8, 9 years old getting flown halfway across the country for a tournament. Are you kidding me? I mean, good for you. You got that kind of money to burn, but man,
Yeah, and thinking so they're so burned out by the time they even get to high school sports, and then they're expected to be, hey, but you're gonna do this in college too, right? And you just go, oh no, this is so hard. But what I start thinking, and I don't know, and maybe like, I can't imagine being in, like, trying to find a partner in this day and age. Like, where do you go? What is the, as I think of the leaders that you're working with, they probably already have families and that kind of stuff. But some of these young kids that are coming up, where do they find relationship at? Where do they go? If it's not at work, because we talked about, not coming to work. If it's not at church, if it's not at, where do they go?
Yeah. Well, that is an interesting question. I actually, earlier this week, I had lunch with a young man who, interestingly, had met his wife online, and it was through one of the networks that's fairly reputable. And they were 3 states apart when they first met, and started building a relationship kind of through email and video, and then couple of months into it, finally their schedules allowed one of them to make the drive and meet up in person. And, the magic was there and the interest was there, and they kept asking the right questions and getting the right answers. And 7 months into the relationship, he proposed, she accepted, and 5 months later they got married, so it was a 1-year turnaround. And that was a while back, and by all accounts, they're very happy, and all the boxes got checked right, and they're making a life together. So, and he ended up, by the way, agreeing to be the one to relocate and move those 3 states to be where she was. So.
Wow. So how because I think that can work. I mean, I see it working. I see it being part of life and in artificial intelligence, and the whole thing of if the algorithm is able to put you together because you put all the right information into it, at least to get you started. I don't think you should get married off of what it says. So what are in like with what you do in helping folks, how are you using artificial intelligence maybe as a tool, but not as a ultimate, I guess, authority on everything that is computerized? I mean, are you that part of what you're doing, or?
I am using AI, but I'm not using it directly or even indirectly in my actual coaching time. What I'm using it for is helping me in my, what I'll call the creative part of my business. If I get an idea about an article or a show I want to do, I will use AI to research it. I will, I've done things like I've asked AI to go explore Reddit threads on a certain topic and find out what people are chatting about on Reddit. And what's top of mind, how are they looking at the problem that I'm thinking about, and get literal quotes, and I can gauge the mindset of the way people are thinking or talking about a certain subject, and then I can put my article together and try to make a point of asking people to consider something one way or another. So it's more in the, I guess I would call it my training library, my blog content, where I post those articles. They're little nuggets of coaching and training that I put out there on a regular basis.
Cool. Do with some of your clients where you're talking about AI and what they're going to do with it, or is it just with you, just how you're using it to make your life better? And is it, I guess the last part of that is it making your life better for a relationship, or is it just making your life better?
No, I don't think it's done anything on the relationship front. I haven't found a use case for asking AI something on that, but again, I don't really use it specifically during or after a coaching session. I've certainly had a lot of discussions with leaders about how they're thinking about using AI in their own business or in their own work.
Mm-hmm.
And, those are always interesting discussions. The one big caution everybody still talks about is the idea of you got to have a human in the loop. You need to, whatever AI says or does or outputs, you want to check it. You want to be sure that it's on point with what you're trying to communicate or share, and you don't want to just blindly send it out there in the world.
Yeah. When I was, thinking or talking about relationship, when I think of relationship and AI, I think is, hey, this tool either allowed me to, do like, let's say, maybe a Zoom or something to do a coaching or a virtual coffee or something, but it freed me up because the time that I would have spent behind my screen, I now have time to go meet with somebody. Now I could take that extra time and go take a nap and not utilize it. But when I think of all the things that is freeing me up, if I'm consciously going, wait a minute, because I was able to send this email in, 2 minutes instead of 20 minutes, now that's 18 more minutes that I can go be somewhere with somebody.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. In that regard, being able to build that efficiency and that time management idea. Yes, absolutely. To the extent you can find something to leverage the power of AI and build time for you, and I've heard some people talk about time management and for leaders as the idea of you got to build margin in your day, just like a business to be profitable, you want to have the highest margin you can have for the work you're doing. And margin is the difference between income and expense. And same thing is true with time. You want to have margin time in your day so that you can take advantage of special opportunities that might come up unexpectedly, but you got to use it wisely. You can't, like you said, you can't just go take a nap unless you're physically exhausted and need a nap, and that happens too. And so that's a good use of it if that's true.
Yeah, and I guess that can help you if you're able to take the nap. So then you can go spend more time in relationship, I guess would be my next thought. Or, it's, if we think of it in a way is, how is this going to help me relate to others? Because all the work that we do, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, isn't all the work we do so that we can have these amazing relationships? Or do we just do work because we enjoy it? And it's, to me, enjoyment is the relationship part, is what the work allows me to do. And sometimes I think we forgot a lot about that.
Right. No, that's fair.
Oh, cool. So what, I know if there, I don't know, as I had you on here and you answered all of my cool questions and stuff. What did you want to make sure that we talked about tonight, that you wanted to dive a little bit deeper in that maybe we didn't get to, or we didn't get to talk about? Or I've enjoyed this conversation tremendously, and I want you to, yeah. Go ahead.
I've enjoyed it too, and at the sake of not opening up another can of worms on something else, I'll just say that I think this is a good discussion, and the idea is that I think the big bottom line is leaders or even just people in general need to think about that ability to connect with others, and maybe in respect, if you're a parent and you see your kids struggling with it, don't ignore it. Try to think of something you can do to help them. And if you're a younger person and you're struggling with it, reach out to an adult somewhere or a more senior colleague where you might be, whether it's in your community, at your church, or at your work. And don't be afraid to ask for help, developing a skill or an ability that you don't feel like you've got yet. Just be willing to ask for the kind of mentoring to add a skill or add a talent that you don't already have. And that's the way you can maximize your opportunity for success in the long run.
Yeah, I think it's so important to, like what you said, is finding people or finding mentors. For me, that was huge. One of my coaches in college, said, you are going to be as good as the people that you surround yourself with, the mentors that you have. And he said, and don't just look for mentors that will just tell you good stuff about yourself. Look for those mentors that will truly look at wherever you're at and then help you move forward to where you want to be, and have mentors in other different areas. There's not one person that can help you in all the different areas of your life. Like if you have issues with your family life, then you find somebody who's where you want to be and find that. If you have mentors at work or leadership or, with kids, always find those mentors. And for me, it's been such a blessing now that I'm 60 years old and I'm more on the mentor side instead of the mentee side on a lot of it. But I don't think I get to 60 the way that I am without seeking out. And I think a lot of people think that the mentor is going to just show up and knock on their door and say, hey, I want to mentor you. I want to be your friend. Will you let me?
Doesn't work that way. Nope.
Yeah, but don't you see that some people do that? They're like, I'm miserable. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to find my next step. And they think if they just play more video games or play more or whatever it is they're doing, it's what you're doing is not working. So you have to change what you're doing.
That's right. That's right.
And like you said, seeking out, what would you say? Like, I know you have stuff going on, but what's the best places to go to seek out the type of mentorship like you're talking about?
Well, it does start with the areas, the organizations, the groups, the tribes that you might line up with. I mean, there's so many options now. You can go to LinkedIn and there's thousands and thousands of groups you can join for free, and you can start identifying people that have common interests. There's community groups, there's trade industry based groups. At your own work, there are people above you in the chain that have good experience and probably will have done something that impresses you or that you relate to. Those are prime targets for asking for help. Reach out to those people. And the big thing I try to encourage people to think about, don't walk up to somebody and say like, Dr. B, I want you to be my mentor. And you're going, well, for what? Oh, just everything. Just, talk to me about life. It's like, no. You need to try to be as specific as possible when you approach these people. And if it's somebody at work, it might be things like, I've watched you talk to a large group. I'm not comfortable talking to a large group. Can you give me some pointers or give me some ideas about how you learned how to do that so well? Or maybe it's just, I use the phrase, read the room, You just seem to be a master at reading the room and figuring out who's thinking what at what time. That's a great skill to learn. And you can find a mentor that maybe will help you with some of that. I mean, just the options are huge. It's the idea of finding people that can do good work to help fill some gap that you've identified in your learning that you want to be able to do better or add it to your toolkit.
Man, that's so good. Well, that's why I've started the Becoming the Person universe. And if you go to becomingtheperson.com, you can check us out. But the whole goal of the community that is so that people can find that type of mentorship, whether it's, you come on and you kind of talk about the things that you're doing and say somebody resonates with you and says, hey, I would love to call Doug and be part of it. Or, I want to do a lot of, like I talked about earlier, the virtual coffees, where I'm hoping that folks that come in will go through the directory and say, wait a minute, this person would be a good person to do this virtual coffee with, but with the caveat of I'm not going on to sell them something. I'm going on this to say, how can I serve you? And then how can you serve me? And how can we create this network or relationship together? Because if we get enough people with enough relationships and enough networks, then they have a whole bunch of choices of where to go. And then continuing to give good content and have these conversations and say, oh, wait a minute, I remember that podcast that Dr. B and Doug did together, and they spent the whole time talking about relationships, and I didn't get it because I was like, when are they going to talk about the skill set or what I got to do at work? And now I get it because and then we're doing connect where we'll start out and hey, let's introduce ourselves and who are we at, and then go to some groups that are a breakout room that is kind of like-minded folks, and then ultimately maybe get into some life group type stuff, because I believe it all starts with, like you said, connection. It all starts with relationship. If you're going to be a great boss, you need to know how to connect and have a relationship. If you're going to be a great skier, if you're going to just be somebody who's happy in life, and maybe it's just me, but I don't think if all I do is get up every day and go to work and come home, that I have enough fulfillment to say this is an amazing life, because I never talked to anybody at work. I just did my job, came home, turned on my games or whatever I did, and then watched some television and watched a whole bunch of other people pretend, and I never got to fulfill my purpose.
Yeah.
Maybe if you would, I would love it if you just, whatever you want to say, and then maybe end with what it means to live in purpose.
Well, I do think we all are put here for a purpose. Scripture tells us we're all uniquely and wonderfully made. And I think possibly the biggest challenge, there's a quote from Mark Twain. He said, 2 important days in a man's life, the day he was born and the day he figures out why. And I think that's a quest that a lot of people ignore because they feel like it's too ethereal, doesn't make sense, too hard to figure out. But it's really not that hard to figure out if you pay attention to some of the patterns that you're living. You're going to discover there's certain things you get to do that are just very rewarding, very fulfilling. Other things you get asked to do, you do it, you comply, you participate, but you go, not a wow for me. I'm glad I did it, but I don't want to do it again, that kind of thing. When you start piecing together some of those patterns, you can discover an opportunity for good work that serves a greater good, helps people be better people, and that can be your pathway. And when you find that and move on with it, you'll have a lot better sense of that accomplishment and satisfaction.
Wow. Thank you for that, Doug. How do people get a hold of you if they, hey, I really resonate with him, I want to at least call him up and explore a possibility of learning?
Easiest way to do it is hop over to my own website, which is simply my name, DougThorpe.com. That's THORPE.com. There's some contact buttons there to book a free discovery call, or there's some other free resources. My blog is there. A link to my podcast is there. We've got over almost 500 episodes on the podcast. So, a lot of great content there for particularly business leaders and entrepreneurs. But, I'd be happy to reach out and talk to people. I'm all over social media, so LinkedIn, et cetera, but just hop to the website's the best one.
Oh, cool. Well, Doug, I want to thank you for getting back on here and putting up with, me and trying to navigate Topeka, Kansas, or wherever I'm at here as I'm trying. But I just thought that this conversation is so important, and I wanted to get it out there. And so I wanted to make sure that, the folks who are, joining and getting in, have some resources, because I don't want to think that I got to wait 6 months to get my life going, or I don't know where to go. And hopefully this will be something that'll help folks that they'll be able to jump in and do. And so for those of you seeing my yellow face instead of my whatever color, white light face, I apologize, but I think the content was just so good tonight. And I just appreciate you in a big way. And I'm going to get you back on and maybe teach a lesson to us about what leadership means or what we can do in the community. And just, as we continue to grow, that we get to go together. So thank you so much for being part of it. I believe for the rest of you, you're God's greatest gift. He loves you if you allow him to. Just make sure you plug in. If there's anything you got out of us tonight, is don't just wait for it to happen to you. Find a way to plug in. And we'll look forward to talking to you guys all in the next one. Have an amazing, awesome day. Now I think I'm going to get this outro right, because I actually am pushing the button that's going to go here. It'll be the right music and everything. So we'll see if I get it.